Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. We're going to be continuing reading from the book al-Ajwubah al-Jaliya fi al-Ahkam al-Hanbaliya, or the clear answer to the Hanbali Rulings by Sheikh Musa bin Issa al-Qaddoomi rahimahullah. This is the second lesson in the Tayammum lesson. So let us begin. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا بما ينفعنا وزدنا علما ويقينا وفهما وعملا يا رب العالمين. قال المؤلف رحمه الله نفع الله به وبعلومه وبعلوم مشايخنا في الدارين ameen. 32. What is wajib for tayammum? So just to reiterate, we are continuing part 2 of the tayammum. This is lesson number 16 in our series. As usual, we're reading from the Sheikh Khalid Shah translation, and we are on page 49, question 32. So, what is wajib for tayammum? And the author replies, it is wajib to say Bismillah. It is excused if one omits it out of forgetfulness or ignorance, but not intentionally. So this is the exact same thing that we've taken about the Bismillah in the wudu and in the ghusl, so I think this should be familiar to you by now. And like in the al-ghusl, there's only one wajib, which is the Bismillah. Now the author goes on, number 33. How many fards are there for tayammum? What are they? And the author replies, there are 5 fards. They are A. To wipe the face other than the mouth. Now when we say face, we do need to give some additional explanation because this is going to be different as opposed to how we define the face in al-wudu and al-ghusl. So the face does include the beard, which is the same as what we've previously discussed, but it does not include the skin underneath the beard, even if it's a thin beard. Likewise, it does not include the inside of the mouth or the nose. In fact, it is disliked to put the turab, the dirt, in the mouth or the nose. So these are a few important points to differentiate how we're describing the wedge or the face in at-tayammum versus al-wudu and al-ghusl. So the next one, B, wiping the hands up to the wrists. So this wording in the Arabic here is the same as it is in Dalil al-Talib. Masul yadaini ila al-kaw'aini. And the author, in using these words, has already kind of preempted the definition of the yad. So the yad or hand can also mean arm. So once again, the way that we're describing the yad here, in English we would rather say like hand as opposed to arm, whereas the word yad, when we're talking about the wudu and ghusl, would better be translated as the arm. So Shaykhuna Dr. Mustafa, hafadhullah, he mentioned that this is from the mufradat of the madhab. Regarding this definition of the hand, we can talk about it, but one thing to mention is that already this is using hand with this meaning is established in the nusus or the text of Quran and Sunnah when talking about, for example, the cutting the hand of the sariq or the thief, or also talking about wiping the hand with the private part. So we're using the word yad and it's having this meaning of hand as opposed to the entire arm. And Al-Sharih, Shaykh Al-Imam Al-Buhuti, he mentions in Sharh Al-Muntaha the hadith of Ammar, which is recorded by Al-Bukhari and Muslim, where when mentioning التيمم, he says إنما كان يكفيك أن تقول بيديك هكذا ثم ضرب بيديه الأرض ضربة واحدة ثم مسح الشمال على اليمين وظهر كفيه ووجهه. So he's saying that it would be sufficient for you, and he showed with his hands that he hit the earth with one strike, and then he wiped the left on the right, I mean the left hand on the right hand, on the top or the exterior of the hand and the face. So this definition of yad here, meaning just hand, this is all the evidence how we understand it as such. Okay, the third fard of tayammum, C, maintain the correct order. And it should be mentioned that this issue of the tartib, maintaining the correct order, is specific to the tayammum for the minor impurity, not the major impurity. So just to reiterate, you need to do al-wudu, there's no water. When you do the tayammum, you have to do it in the order that is mentioned, so face and then hands. However, if you are in a state of major impurity such as al-janaba, that is not a condition. Then the author goes on D, to maintain continuity for tayammum done for the minor state of impurity. And I mean, I just noticed this. It is kind of interesting that for this one, the continuity, he does specify the minor impurity, but for the previous one, a tartib or the correct order, he doesn't. But as we said, it is a case that's specific for the minor impurity. Both of these, the correct order and the continuity. And Al-Buhuti mentions in Sharh Al-Muntaha that when we say the continuity, this would be based on the type of continuity timing in al-wudu. So the time that, as we had previously discussed for wudu, the time that it would take for one limb to dry before washing or wiping the next limb. So you would estimate that time to mean the continuity in this context. Although obviously the soil or dirt isn't drying, but this is just something that we would estimate and apply accordingly. And then the author goes on E, to specify intention for what tayammum is made for, whether for minor or major states of impurity or removal of najasa on the body. So when he says to specify intention for what tayammum is made for, this can be something even other than the prayer. So this can include, for example, tawaf around the Kaaba, or touching a mushaf or Quran. So if we look to nail, there are a few good points here. I mean, he reiterates what we've already said, that one specifies, is it for a hadith akbar or asghar, major or minor impurity, or najasa. And then in the nail, he just reminds us that this is not lifting al-hadith, it's only allowing the prayer or the other similar act. And for this intention in a nail, he gives the example of yanwi istibaha salat al-dhuhr, مثلا. So one would intend the istibaha or allowing for Salat al-Dhuhr. And as we said, one would also mention the type of the hadath. Is it the major or minor? Another good point that they mention here in the Dalil and Nail is that in the case that someone was in a state of minor and major impurity, so the state of janaba and the state of a muhdath, one intention will not be sufficient for the other. So this could be different than like the ghusl, where if one's in the state of janaba, they do the ghusl with the intention of janaba, it's covering everything. However, he mentions that it is possible for one in that state of being in major and minor impurity to intend in one tayammum both minor and major impurity, and it will count for both of them. So I think that the tayammum is quite clear. There aren't many components to it, but still we'll quickly go through just a description of how one performs the tayammum. So one will start with making the intention, and as we said, in the intention you will be making an intention to make a certain act permissible. Then one will say that Bismillah. Then one is going to strike the ground or the dirt with his two hands, and he wants to keep his fingers kind of spread apart so that the dirt or the soil gets in between them, and there will just be one strike with both hands. The books also mention, the fiqh books mention, it's also permissible that one sticks their hand in the dirt or soil, so long as that when they remove it, the soil is still like sticking to their hands, as we've previously described. Then one is going to and if you're wearing a ring, you should take the ring off when you're doing this strike of the ground or putting the hand in the soil. So no rings on the fingers while doing the tayammum. Then one is going to wipe his face with the bottoms of his fingers. So not the whole hand, but just with the fingers. Then one is going to wipe the top of his hands with his palms. So one will wipe the top of the right hand with the palm of the left hand, and then the top of the left hand with the palm of the right hand. And that is the tayammum. So I think it's quite straightforward. There are some discussions in the larger explanations on some of these points, but this is what is agreed upon in the madhab. So now we're at the final part of the tayammum lesson, 34. How many invalidators does tayammum have, and what are they? And the author replies, there are 5 invalidators of tayammum. A, whatever invalidates wudu. And before we explain that one, let's just refresh our memories. Whatever we're doing the tayammum for, it can be invalidated by these things. So it's not just the prayer, it could be reading the Quran, touching the Quran, staying in the masjid, najasa on the body, etc. Nafila prayers, supererogatory prayers, janazah, funeral prayer, any of these things, whatever you've intended it for, any of these invalidators will invalidate it for that purpose. So the first one, whatever invalidates wudu, and one can go back to our lesson on the invalidators of wudu to hear about all those in detail. And just the point here, that these would then specifically apply to the person who has made the tayammum for the minor hadath al-asghar. So the one who has made tayammum for the hadith al-akbar, it is invalidated by the things that would necessitate the ghusl, such as intercourse, the exiting of sperm with pleasure. The exception would be the one who has made that type of a tayammum for the haid or nifas, the menstruation or postpartum bleeding. So in that case, those things will not be invalidated by what we've already mentioned, or the tayammum for those things, we can say. Okay, the author goes on, he continues, finding water. So this water, as long as that the water you found is sufficient in quantity, you can access it, and there's no harm in you using it. Under these conditions, it would then invalidate the tayammum. And then the author goes on, exiting of the time, meaning the time of the prayer, and he has in parentheses, tayammum only lasts for one salat time. So if you've made the tayammum for a prayer, like Salat al-Asr, the time of al-Asr ends, and you still need to make tayammum at the time of al-Maghrib, when the time of al-Maghrib enters, you will then make a new tayammum. And likewise, if you're doing other things that you made tayammum for in the time of a certain prayer, and that time ends, likewise you will have to stop what you were doing that was made permissible and redo the tayammum. So for example, reading Quran or sitting in the masjid, when the time of the prayer where you made the tayammum ends, you have to stop doing those things, and if you want to continue them, you need to make a new tayammum. And the author goes on, D, ending the cause of the tayammum. So if the thing that you've made the tayammum for ends, so does your permissibility to use the tayammum. So if you made the tayammum because you're sick and then you get better, you can no longer use the tayammum. Likewise, if it's like extremely cold and then it becomes warmer, likewise you can't use the tayammum. In the case that you do have this kind of change in condition during the time of that prayer, the thing that you do, such as the prayer or the tawaf, if you've done it for tawaf, these type of obligatory acts, you don't need to repeat them. I believe he mentions here in the nail Taghlibi that, and he's quoting from Sharh al-Iqna, that it said that it's mustahib to repeat them. Allah knows best, but you don't have to. And finally, the last one, removal of a khuf if tayammum was made while wearing it. So if you're wearing the khuf and then you've made the tayammum, if you remove the khuf, that breaks the tayammum. Likewise, other things that you can wipe on, like the amama. If you've had the amama on and then you've removed it, it will break also the tayammum. And there are maybe like 2 points to mention from Sharh al-Muntaha. One is regarding the case of the woman who is has haid or nifas, the menstruation or postpartum bleeding. If she has made tayammum and she's in that kind of state, and then those things end, unlike the other things, it doesn't break the tayammum. So in case that wasn't clear before, I think that the way that it's worded here in Al-Muntaha is a bit clearer in Sharh Al-Muntaha. Finally, it's also mentioned in Al-Muntaha and the Sharh, this scenario where one has intended to combine two prayers. So you have the prayer in the first time and the prayer in the second time. So if you make the intention to combine in the time of the first prayer, and likewise you do the tayammum in the time of the first prayer, it will still be valid, and you've intended to do the combining in the time of the second prayer. That's what I need to point here. So you've intended to combine in you made the intention in the time of the first prayer, but to combine actually in the time of the second prayer, and you've made the tayammum also in the time of the first prayer. So in this case, when the time of the first prayer completes, it will not break the tayammum. You can still do the tayammum in the time of the second prayer. And this is because the intention has covered 2 times, so the 2 times of the prayer are as 1 time. So I'm sorry if the past 2 lessons have been a little bit difficult. You can see when you go into the details of the tayammum, there are a lot of things that need explanation. There are a lot of things that, while they resemble what we've discussed previously in al-wudu and al-ghusl, they are in fact not the same. So all of these things need to be clarified. And even for myself, I had to do some review before presenting this. But inshallah, if you find it difficult, just listen to the recordings again. And as I advised in the beginning of the course, you should be taking notes. It will also help you to memorize these things and make note of these fine points. So let us conclude here. As always, please don't forget us in your dua and that of all the Muslimin, our brothers and sisters in the Ummah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een.